Okay, we are back once again and ready to enter this matrix and figure out, well, what the hell is going on? And that's what I want to know. Welcome back, Nikolai. The
Hey, Mitch.
I don't even know. Again, I always think, what the hell do I call you? The Godfather of spirituality, or
Uh,
what? It's
no,
like,
just Nikolai's fine.
yeah. Well, something that was top of mind just a few days ago, and I was thinking, like, well, I know there's got to be a sense of what they are all about, and it was about dreams.
Hmm.
Like, because you think about people. I mean, I have dreams all the time. My girlfriend sometimes has them. I think she has them all the time, but she just never remembers them. But what the hell are they? And are they pointing us somewhere towards the goal? Is it the matrix trying to deliver some kind of information? Is it our avatars or our systems trying to burn off some kind of energy? I mean, when we're having a dream, is it information that's being given to us, or is it something else? And what's been your experience in terms of that?
Yeah, this is a very large topic in let's call it in the space of spirituality, and I'm not an expert in dreams, but like I know enough to kind of share the vectors.
Yeah.
It's somebody I worked with. I had a whole module and modality to decipher the dreams, and she's spectacular in that. In a nutshell, there's like I think around 6 types of dreams. The first one, easiest to start with. At night, there is a lot of integrational experiences happening. So we live through experiences during the day, and then all of our energetic body and consciousness is integrating those experiences, cleansing, unloading, repackaging, fragmenting, and doing all that stuff. First type of dreams is basically the result of that. So they're just like, basically think of it as just junk, because it's all like information, energy, which is the same, being integrated, removed, harmonized, and the list goes on. Then there are dreams that through which the information is communicated to us. And if we, in our last episode, we chatted about symbolism and how do we read the symbols of the
Yeah.
universe and etc. You can ask your higher structures, which is basically your soul spirit, your spirit guides, to communicate with you via dreams. And I know some people in my circle who use that effectively. And the reason it is easier for them to communicate uh, to some people via dreams is, as we were just discussing before this call, because the ego of majority of the people is quite strong. The ego of the mind is quite strong, and there are all types of mental models, distortions, trauma, and etc. that are not allowing them to connect with their true essence and not allowing them to connect with truth, because they through those distortions they want to see the world specific way. When you're asleep, your ego mind or mind ego is off, so they can show you what is actually happening. And the downside that I found in dreams, a lot of times the dreams are metaphorical, and because they're metaphorical, it's harder to interpret them. With that said, when you request your higher structures to communicate through dreams, they'll try to make those dreams as clear as possible. And so that's basically another type of dreams. Another type of dreams, a third type of dreams, is what do they call them? Prophetic dreams, when you're not using it as consistent method of communicating with your higher structures, and you need to receive a prophetic message from the higher structures or from other structures, you will have a dream that is emotionally intense. So for me, the measurement is where there are real intense emotions attached to it, then there is a higher chance that this is a message that you're supposed to receive. And that could also be an entryway from your higher structures to try to get to listen to you. That could be also prophetic dream. So then when you would if you wake up from that dream and you feel like emotional, or when you go back to that, you feel the real emotions and feelings, there's a higher chance that's the dream. With that said, there are dreams where, let's say, your higher structures are just working on you, cleansing your energetic structure, doing all types of work on you at night. And there could be fears coming out, and all types of emotions coming out. That's not necessarily the prophecy. That you could be just watching a horror movie just because there is energetic work being done on you. So all types of energetic things being pulled out, entities, implants, and the list goes on. So, and that can be experienced that way. So as you can see, there are many types, and the best way is to have somebody who can help you interpret them, because they can be interpreted. The one thing I would say, do not buy a book that interprets dreams, because a yellow dog in Mitch's dream and yellow dog in Nikolai's dream are two completely different symbols. Each of us are unique, and we will have different symbolism. Yellow dog will mean something else because when you're a child, you love the yellow dog. When I don't know, was a teenager, I saw a cartoon about yellow dog, and it means completely different things to us. So the subconscious or conscious or higher conscious are trying to communicate with us using all types of methods it can, and it's tried to make it as understandable as possible. So if you're really having dreams, and you feel like that's a method that is being used to communicate with you, just find a specialist who can help you with that, and then they will be then this method and the results of that will be very impactful, because you can really it can really help you with your evolution and growth and development.
And what about nightmares, for example, where you have some moment, because I know this has happened to me, not often, but on occasion, where there's some powerful moment when it's like you're close to dying, or you get in some sort of physical altercation. It's like as soon as it happens, it's like boom, you wake up out of it. So
I
in those
feel like
instances,
it's different for everyone, and I've mentioned already a few examples. It could be cleansing happening at night. It could be you reliving some kind of experience that is unprocessed, and it's trying to draw your attention that you should process that experience, especially if it's repeating. Then you could be experiencing ego death, and that's what's happening, and that's how it's unpacking at night. And ego death is basically, as everyone or whoever is supposed to wake up right now or awaken right now, everyone is going through ego death experience. And what I mean by that, there is a part of your ego structure, some kind of subpersonality or whatever it is, that is dying, and it's creating a sense as if the whole of you is dying. And just before this call, we touched on this concept, and before we chat about this, archetypes and subpersonalities. So when there is a strong subpersonality that exists in a person, and let's say we were discussing your subpersonality of that is trying to prove to everyone their self-worth, and that's like majority of humans on this planet, always trying to prove their self-worth. When you realize that a lot of things that happen around us happen not because of our actions, but because we came here to have specific evolutionary experience, and Matrix creating those events for us to go through those experiences, and we just need to show up and live through those experiences and make the right conclusions, derive the right insights, then we stop being egotistical that everything we've achieved in our life is because of our hard work, because we showed up, because we grinded. And this is also a subpersonality of overachiever. Those are very dangerous subpersonalities, because once the person succeeded, let's say once in something, then they try to apply that method everywhere. Let's say They were working hard and hard and hard, and then their business started working. That's not how it works. What happened is that you were working, figuring out how to deliver value and how to align with what you actually should be doing. And once you've aligned with that, the matrix finally released access to the clients, to the capital, and etc. And you think you've won those clients. No, nothing happens without the permission from the matrix. So unless you met specific check marks, that means, and what happens when people grind, one thing they miss the most, it forces them to ponder, self-reflect, and develop. They try different methods. They think they're just trying different methods in business, but as part of that, they're also trying different methods within themselves, or who they are, how they should express themselves. So if you happen to align with the right evolutionary experience, the right methods, you got the right lessons, realization about self, then you move forward. But people think they move forward because they grind it. Now they've created this, sub-personality of grinding, and that's how you achieve results. And you try to repeat that. The challenge was that, and a lot of people have experienced that sub-personality only works up until you're around 30, because you still have a lot of energy that was given to you for the first part of your life. As a result, you're ineffectively using that energy. Past around 30, 35, let's call it, that's the time of the second. Usually that's the time of a second metacycle where you're supposed to get the second batch of energy. But because most people don't get fully aligned, they don't get that second batch of energy. The energy starts running out, and this brute force grinding method stops working. And now they're like, what the fuck? I've applied this method before, and now it's not working. So what people start doing next, because they don't feel as energized, they attribute that to aging. And then they start using all types of methods, trying to preserve and extract energy from anything and everything. Usually it leads to all types of exploration of like health routines and stuff like that, morning rituals. And there's like, oh fuck, I'm running out of energy, healthier diet, better sleep, and that
Cold showers.
I don't know, standing on the board of nails, done that, try that, IV drips, the list goes on, right?
Yeah.
But that's illusionary. That basically what it does, it slows down consumption of energy by your body. So if you have an unhealthy lifestyle, the body is using up energy from the same bucket. So yeah, it slows down the consumption of that energy. Then it gets you a little bit more aligned with the types of energies you need to get from the environment to fill you up a little bit. But that energy is never enough to fill you up to being the same as you were 20, 25, etc. when you were 20, 25 years old, because you just had a full tank of energy. Now you're running on 20, 30%. And subconsciously you sense that you're running out. And hence you start doing all these things trying to fill up at least 2-3%. The way to fill up again to 100% is to stop all this madness and to truly realign with your true essence, with inner truth. And that sounds all like hand wavy and woo-woo.
Yeah.
Simple. To realign with what makes you truly, genuinely happy. Because what makes you truly, genuinely happy is what your evolutionary experience is here.
Thinking about the sub-personalities that you were just talking about, why is it that these, I'm going to call them cultural sub-personalities, at least I would say certainly Western culture, right? We're like, we got to grind, we got to work hard, you got to persevere, no pain, no gain, all these sort of mm, ideas. Um, why does Matrix allow them to be celebrated, or what is the purpose, I guess, of these being so celebrated throughout, the internet, online space? You'd be hard pressed to find any sort of coach or even business school that wouldn't say this is how it is.
This is how you achieve success.
This is
First of all,
this.
they define success in a very weird way, and then they define how to get there in a very weird way.
Yes. So what I'm wondering
I
is,
mean, when I say weird to people, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense to their sub personalities, but to me, it's a pile of shit.
yeah, but so what is Matrix getting out of that
Yeah, yeah.
idea being the celebrated?
Allowing this being dominating in our culture.
Yeah.
It's we've touched on this briefly. Matrix version number 5 is predominantly about teaching the carriers of consciousness, which on this planet, in this situation, are humans, the skill of discernment.
Mm.
So, how do you discern truth from illusion? And if, first of all, there are universal truth, which are universal laws, but then there are individual truth, which is your unique path of life, which is your unique incarnational program, meaning the soul loaded into this body to have a unique experience, to develop specific type of qualities, which is develop a way to interact with different types of energies. So you're learning how to discern to truth is like what is aligned with universal laws, like do not kill others unless it's self-defense. If it's truly valid self-defense, then like universal law of contract, for example, if you have agreed to something, Matrix will carry out that contract, even if you try to be funny about it and navigate your way out of it rather than saying, hey, this contract does not align with me, let's break this contract. As simple as that. Or you made a promise, you have to fulfill a promise because it's a contract. So that's one discernment. The second discernment is your truth, which is what is your path. So everybody's being bombarded by all this information. If you do this morning ritual, you're going to be a billionaire. That's not your path. You can pick out tidbits out of that ritual that is aligned with you and your path and will make you happy. It will be easy to do. You will be excited to do it because it's aligned with you. So the whole idea, especially with super interconnected world with the technology that we have, we can see the full menu. When we were born into a village, our menu was limited, so it was much easier to pick from a menu of 5 options. You're in a village, you can be what are called blacksmith, you can be a shepherd, you can be blah blah blah, and you're like, oh, okay, you try being blacksmith, you hit your finger, you broke your finger, you're like, no, I'm gonna persevere. Then you broke your other finger. It's like, oh, maybe I'm not a blacksmith. And it's like, I'm gonna go herd the sheep, and oh, that's fun. I'm just like hanging out under the tree and walking around and exploring new territories, and you feel happiness. You've aligned. Now the menu is like billion options, not only of the direction and the path where you can where you can go, but also how to go there. So you might even align with your purpose correctly, intuitively, but then how you're getting there is through suffering. And that's also what discernment about is, to stop suffering and to start doing things that make you happy. Most people do things was like, oh, I'm just going to earn enough money and I'm going to start doing what makes you happy. You've already died. If you're in that situation, stop that today and start figuring out a plan to transition to only doing things that make you happy.
It's funny thinking about how everything is fractal and that sort of idea. And what you're talking about is exactly one of the main, presuppositions in NLP, or at least in the NLP programs that I've done, where Carl especially will say we're always choosing the best feeling, K, right? The best feeling thing on life's menu. So the problem is, if on our menu there's only 5 things, well, we're choosing the best of those 5,
Yeah.
and it might be, feel sorry about myself and blah blah, but it was better than like, well, okay, kill mom and dad or whatever you had going on. So yeah, as we expand out, and it's like, oh man, we've got actually these billions of options. If we can actually realize them and see that they're on the menu, we got more choices than ever. And it is, well, that's the barometer. It's like, well, where's the happiness?
And where it becomes even harder is that some options are highlighted by trends. So I'll give you an example. 20 years ago, building a startup was the most idiotic thing on the planet. Why would you take a risk? Go work for Microsoft. Go work for, I don't know, a big four. Go work, blah, blah, blah. It will be safe. I remember as I was going through university, that's the messages. Like everybody was like, my friends were looking crazy at me. Like, why would you build a company? Like I was literally like making zero money, spending the little I had and spending all the time I had. And they were already printing cash because they went and got amazing jobs for the summer and then graduated and blah, 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 right? Now building startups is in fashion. Everybody's entrepreneur, but not everybody's entrepreneur. Everybody thinks they are an entrepreneur. Somebody should just have like, so it flipped now. And now a lot of people, once again, are not living their true life. Before they were not a bunch of entrepreneurs, were not entrepreneurs because everybody was telling them not to be because it's safer to get a job. Now there are too many entrepreneurs and many of them shouldn't be entrepreneurs, once again, because it's in fashion. And that's, again, when there is fashion trends, that's what truly develops discernment. Do you have balls or do you have inner pillar to go against the grain? To be like, I just don't sense like I should be an entrepreneur. I just feel like I want to be doing pottery and I'm like gonna do sculptures and whatever. Or I just feel like I should be a trader in Wall Street. There is something that makes me deeply happy and I can do it 10 hours a day and come out energized. And by the way, that's also a path. There's nothing wrong with being a financier. There are people who have, like my sister, her lineage talent is financier. As a result, she studied as an accountant and worked for top banks and then became director of finance for like one of the most successful private equity roll-ups. So like that was her first part of life. She was connected with that. Was her whole life that? No. She basically, as soon as she completed and activated the necessary skills, energies, and that, she just couldn't continue doing that. It stopped. And that's where we got to be also understand what makes us happy for period of life is not what's going to make us happy in the next period of life. So that's the third piece. So discernment about general universal laws, discernment about who we are in that. And the third piece, being open enough to be fluid and adaptive to change as our inner truth shifts. It doesn't really change, but it shifts because if we've already become expert or activated that skill of being financier and we're stuck in that, that means we're not evolutionary expanding. We're not growing. So the matrix will just push you out of that situation. So then you go and build the next skill. And the funniest thing, you can develop a lot of that. She could have stayed that and unlock capabilities in that as long as she started viewing her life and her job differently. But in some scenarios, it's just so much easier to exit that experience and go into completely new experience because the mind then is not confused because theatrical setting of the matrix changes, and when it's fully changes, it's much easier to get new experience. if we're still in the same act where there's still the same decoration on a theatrical stage, we're being pulled to our old behaviors, which we've already learned them.
Mm-hmm. So you were talking about the previous version of Matrix being about discernment.
Yep.
So, and I know we talked about this right before we jumped on the call. Let's talk about this Matrix 6,
V6.
version 6, right? What would you say is the core tenets of Matrix 6 that make it so different from version 5 point whatever where that operating system was?
So once again, short recap, Matrix V5 is advanced evolutionary school, hence teaching us to discern, teaching us how to find light in the darkness. Because the planet, and if we would describe otherwise, all these things that getting bombarded to us, this is what you should be, this is how you should live life, that is, what's the word? That's luring you in or luring you away from who you are. Let's call it darkness. It's pulling you into darkness, because if you pick the path of who you're not happy, you start suffering, you start contracting, you just go into darkness. So Matrix 5 is developing enough discernment to walk in a path of light through the room of darkness, while it's pulling you into all these types of experiences. And that is what truly develops this inner pillar or inner harmony, where you're so confident, and confident could be perceived as a bad word here, where you're so connected with who you are and your inner truth that you're just, nobody can lure you into any of the stuff that is not yours. You're like, okay, cool that this guy did this and bought himself a yacht. Whatever, that's his path.
Is there almost a parallel there in Bible scripture? You know, the famous quote where it's like, I walk through the valley of death, right? Is there some sort of almost parallel there with this idea of, you know, when we're shining that light in this darkness, that then it's like almost like nothing can harm us, or it's because we're going for the light?
Yeah, that's exactly how it works. When when we choose what makes us happy, we conduct more light or more energy through this body, and nothing can happen with us. But because there are energies that we haven't learned how to interact with, so we're learning how to interact with, they can pull us in. And it's fine. That's an experience. We go into it, we're like, oh, wow, that's not happiness anymore. I'm not going to interact with this energy like this. What would be a happy way of interacting with this energy? Oh, first of all, I don't get triggered. And then I just respond in a constructive way. What is a constructive way to respond to this energy? And to make it more practical one, like I come back to my example is like, or your example, let's say interaction with money. Like money is just an instrument. If we start hogging it, then it's like always further away from us. Or like if we have karma and like somebody's, let's say, stealing money from us, the goal there is to learn that, oh, I should not be attached to it. Let them have it. They need it more, and I will get the money I need. And once it clicks in, the universe stops taking money from you, and it starts bringing you it's just start bringing you money through the things that you do that make you happy. That's it. And so those energies that we don't know how to interact with can pull us off. Let's say they don't pull us off our path. They can make us stumble on our path. And it's part of our path to learn how to interact with those energies. It might be perceived that it pulls us from our path. No, it just, on this path, we face some obstacles. And the energies that we don't know how to interact with are the obstacles. But if we misread the obstacle, it can completely pull us off. It's like, oh, I'm gonna work my ass off to be rich, to have this illusionary safety. and you start doing all types of stuff that does not make you happy, and you go further away, and the matrix is like, whoa, this person is far off the GPS route. Let's smack them. Let's take away their money, career, business, or let's take away health of their close ones, or let's take away their health. So it stops them in the tracks, so they reflect. So it creates a pause in their life. And the matrix is not there to punish you, just matrix is trying to realign you with what makes you happy. And if we get it and we go into it, then we're surprised. We're like, wow, I was resisting this so much. I got slapped and I'm finally doing the things I'm happy. Thanks God. That's the experience I lived with my health. I started having panic attacks and I thought I was doing what I was happy. And yes, part of it, the part of the stuff that I was doing, and we go into detail of that, I think, in the first episode, was making me happy. But 90% of it was not the things I was supposed to do. It was just a grind.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful to the panic attacks because it helped me to realign with 10% and make my life expand that to be 100%. And now the state, it's like, now the state is like, wow, every day I'm like, I do what I'm happy. And as a result, I feel like complete, and I feel need for like consuming things, accumulating things, winning, competing. It doesn't mean that I don't create. We create a lot of stuff. Like, so some of my friends is like, wow, how did you record so many episodes for example, in a podcast in such a short period of time? And by the way, a bunch of them are still not published. And so it's like, it doesn't mean sedentary passive state. But I'm creating from a different place. I'm creating from a place of happiness. And to connect the dots now back to matrix 6. So matrix 5 is discernment. And by the way, before I go to the 6, is there anything about that comment, walking the light and the darkness? Any questions there? Or
No. It just seemed to me like it was such a parallel or example of this advanced evolutionary school. And again, if we think about almost fractals or isomorphic structures, it's like, you can see where, even in that old scripture, they're talking about kind of the same thing about this V5.
Everybody talks about the same things. Yeah. It's all like all the sacred texts talk about the same things using different methods. And the challenge is that a lot of old scripts like Bible, I don't know, whatever the other books are, right? Torah, and the list goes on. First of all, have been written in metaphorical language that takes discernment to decipher fully.
Yeah.
And whatever distortions you have, you will discern or decipher through those distortions, and things will get misunderstood. That's why having a middleman of a priest, pope, the list goes on. That time is over, and pope is out. Let's see what happens next with the structure. The structure has lived and has come to the end. The end of this religious egregors, we're at the end of those religious egregors because they were weaponized. So let's say you take a priest has their own distortions, and now they interpret the book through their distortions. And if a person hasn't developed their own discernment, they're sitting there and listening to with their mouths open. That's also a lesson of discernment. People will tell you all types of things. Feel deep in your heart. Does that resonate? Does that sound true? So all these weaponized structures, and the reason I call them weaponized, because religion there was a sacred text that got changed over time, then interpreted over time in all types of way to use that as a method of managing population. It's just governance tool. It's not, and as they inserted middleman, the church, your connection to higher self, your connection to God, they started tweaking the messages and guiding you in all types of weird directions. And people do find people do find growth. That they're still instruments. They're great instruments. I'm not saying they're not instruments, but the key there is also discernment. So, for example, a person coming out from lowest of the low can come to the church, pray. It will increase their vibration. It will give them foundation, but they will only get you to a specific point. And while they give you this lift, they also instill specific structures that do not allow you to surpass that growth. You stop, because then you can be managed. Yes, your life improved. Now you blindly trust anything and everything because you came from a shitty situation, and you came, let's say, from like a situation 2 out of 10. They get you to 5, 6 out of 10. They'll keep you there forever. Whereas what you can do, use it as an instrument, be grateful to that, express your gratitude, donate some money if you haven't contributed anything, and move on. There is time for everything. There is a beginning and the end to everything. Same as that could be beginning and end. I can compare church to ayahuasca, that could be an instrument as well. You begin, it can give you a lift or can give you insight. Be grateful. Next instrument, continue your evolution. If you stop, then the matrix will do the necessary work to help you continue. So where I was going was that, just to summarize, it's great that those institutions, because now those institutions, they were light shining institutions 20, 30, 50, 100, 500 years ago, because the vibration of the planet was quite low still. Mm-hmm. Now the vibration of the planet has surpassed those institutions so far beyond that they're actually detrimental to people's growth, because they can even barely give the foundation anymore. And if you look at all those institutions, they're even so lost themselves within. It's just politics. Like now there's probably going to be a fight for the new pope, but there's also, yeah.
Well, no, I was just going to ask, like, did you find, like, thinking about it in terms of the Matrix, that it was almost prophetic in a way that the Pope died right after Easter Sunday?
Yeah, well, there are multiple things that's unfolding. Yeah. And if we look somewhere in the night of 20th to 21st, Matrix 6 fully installed. And the holiday of Easter is a church's way. It's one of the days energetically, because energy is shaped by astronomical bodies like the moon, the planet, the sun, the way they're located. Energy flows a specific way. And that's, you look at physics, if you put bodies and like gravity is different ways, the energy shapes in different way, or specific way, unique way. So Easter is one of the few, if not only, holidays that is calculated astrologically. That's why the date changes.
Really?
Yes. Well, it's not the same day every time. It's after, what is it called? The spring, what's the word? The March 21st, whatever that day is called, right? And then there are other, it's like the first full moon cycle or something like that. So it's astrological. And on that day is one of the only days where the person can change or realign with their truth, or change things in their program, incarnational program, or in their individual matrix. So the church created a holiday to bring you to church and make sure you don't change anything and ingrain more propaganda.
Interesting.
We're at the end of these games. Yeah. There's still a lot of games of discernment to play, but those structures are done. Those structures are at the end of their life cycle. Dalai Lama was supposed to wrap up the whole Buddhist teaching, but he hasn't, and he knows that. Basically, all these teachings had a life shelf of 2,500 years, and they're at the end. And if they were truly serving the evolution and growth and expansion of humanity, they would have stepped up and said, you know what, guys, our instruments have served its purpose. And like, I'd say Buddhism is probably one of the cleaner versions out of all other, let's call it religions or teachings. And even that, like, so Dzogchen, some of the subset of Dzogchen, which is Maxime part of, some of those sections, the leaders shut down their schools, shut down their ashrams or whatever you call them, and etc., because they said that's it, the cycle is over. From here and on, the new teachings will surface. But the new teachings are the same teachings, just clear and pure and accessible and understandable. Because the old teachings were originally clean and pure, got rapidly distorted and then misinterpreted. And in the first place, they're metaphorical. So you read a lot of texts. They're very fairy tale types of stories that you have to understand the deep meaning. And now you're sitting and deciphering, and then you can misunderstand it. So the new teachings that are resurfacing, and the job of Maxime and myself, or our souls, were to synthesize those teachings. Hence, we created the Atman Alignment course. And that's basically, let's call it, one of the first versions, or the first versions of these teachings. And once they've created once, they exist in a collective field of consciousness, where we're seeing now more and more experts in the field, professionals in this field, are starting to communicate exactly the same things. And that's how it works. The teachings are free and accessible in the cloud, in this energetic cloud, just ability to pull from there. And we've observed that so many times. What's interesting, we would have a conversation with Maxime, who is my partner and originally my teacher, about something that's unfolding in the matrix. 2-3 days later, there is video that is recorded on YouTube by other people who can access the same energetic fields and etc. And they say word for word what we were discussing. And then more and more videos start showing up. So the exciting time now, this new knowledge is rolling out. And this new knowledge is becoming more and more accessible. One entry point is us. Doesn't have to be us. Once again, listen to your intuition. Somebody will connect with what I'm saying, is what our website is saying, and we welcome everyone. But somebody will get connected and feel connected to someone else, and that's your path. And now that knowledge is becoming freely accessible, not just through what we wrote down, but because we wrote it down or grounded it per se, it now became accessible to anybody who can connect to this field. So now they can ground this knowledge as well, and then they can even create maybe better description of it, better diagrams of that, and etc.
Yeah, so bringing back to this Matrix 6, like,
Yeah.
what makes Matrix 6 so special or different?
So Matrix 5, discernment, advanced evolutionary school, and as a result, because we're walking in a room of darkness and trying to maintain our inner candle light and make that light expand. So there's a lot of like suffering. There's a lot of intense experiences. Matrix 6, we call it a creative lab. It's all about creation, which means is that it's not about how do I stop suffering and become happy. I'm already happy, and I'm going to see what's possible to create from this place of happiness. Innovation in every possible field, in the field of societal studies, in the field of how the economy should work, in the field of technology, in the field of, and it gets even more advanced in the field of what kind of new nature we can create, what kind of new animals, and it's going to be, it gets even more advanced. It's a lab of creation. It's all about creativity and co-creation. However, only people who found the inner harmony or got to a place of being happy in the fifth matrix can transition to the sixth matrix. Because since the sixth matrix, you basically become the closest to God in the body, because you can create anything and everything from a place of happiness. If you have something that you have not processed, some kind of inner fear, inner trauma, inner anger, the list goes on, that energy will create something that will give that energy back to you. So in the fifth matrix, there is a buffer between person's anger and the result in the matrix. In the sixth matrix, if you somehow manage to transition there using some kind of, magic bypasses, you get to sixth matrix and you're holding some anger, high chance you'll die pretty rapidly, because it's the most instantaneous mirror of what's within. Because you're a creator of your life. And if in your, let's say, in your structure, there's still like, oh, I'm going to compete out of compete everyone. Oh, you want to out of compete everyone? The matrix just create a situation where, it seems like everybody around you is always ahead and you're working so hard to out compete to a point where you just die. And it's going to happen very rapidly. So fifth matrix, we're finding this inner light. We develop discernment. We figure out who we are, what's happening in this world. We find this inner happiness and harmony. We transition to six, and what we start thinking only about is what would make me happy to create for this planet, for this universe. And we start creating. For somebody, it will be growing plants. For somebody, it will be advanced technology. For somebody, it will be organizational structures of community, and the list goes on. So that's the difference between 5 and 6. And one more thing I want to add: what has been created in Matrix 5 has started breaking down, because all the energy is transferring from fifth matrix to the sixth matrix, and soon there will be zero energy in the fifth matrix, and that's that transition period. So the world, most of the world right now, most of the infrastructure has been created in the fifth matrix. As a result, most of this infrastructure will start breaking, and has already started breaking. The process actually launched earlier. Now it's just gonna get more intense. Just an example: Trump and tariffs, breaking all the structures across the world, all trade structures. Not only that, a lot of economic structures. De-dollarization. Now there's competition, multipolar world. BRICS emerging with their own, not even currency, because I think what they're realizing, the only way is just everybody trades in their national currency rather than create another currency that once again can become a tool of manipulation, tool of suppression, bullying, and the world, and like whatever word you want to pick. So the breaking down of the fifth matrix infrastructure has started. And the only way for us to transfer the creation from the fifth matrix is for people who've created those things to transition themselves to the sixth matrix, which is basically find their inner happiness. And then as they transition to the sixth matrix, they'll choose which creations they want to bring with them. And it's an energetic process. It doesn't mean if somebody build a skyscraper, like an architect build a skyscraper, and now they have to rebuild it. Now they can just energetically build, wow, this skyscraper is very functional and aligned with the values that I understand of where the world is heading. Then we'll transition. Very few skyscrapers will transition, because that's not how people are supposed to live. People are supposed to live on their own land, space between people in their own field, so they can truly feel who they are. Skyscrapers, it's a model of insectoids, which is basically the way the bees work or other insects. There is one joint mind, and everybody else is kind of a slave. And that's how a lot of subsets of population have been functioning, because of the city structures. Everybody is in the same field that share all the same thoughts, because they're all in each other's energetic field, and it's easier to manipulate and create the thoughts or the ideas through which you just control the whole population. So basically creation in matrix fifth and fifth matrix, only subset of them will transition, and the creators of them will choose what they want to transition. Or the creations that were truly created from a place of happiness will transition. But most of the things in the fifth matrix were created from a place of scarcity, competition, anger, suffering, power grabbing, and the list goes on. Those are low vibration feelings and states. Hence, those creations are filled with that energy. And sixth matrix doesn't support that energy. So things will only accelerate disappearing from this planet unless their creators figure out how to transition and align themselves and pick and choose. I was like, wow, this was a great invention. Let's say internet is great, keeps us connected. You know, people who support all the infrastructure for internet, enough IT people awaken, the internet transitions, you know, or subsets of the internet.
Yeah, I was going to say, in terms of sixth matrix, then a lot of current infrastructure pillars, I guess, like, you know, internet and maybe the medical community, hospitals, will that all be redesigned or reimagined, or how will that show up sort of in the sixth matrix?
First of all, it's very difficult to predict the details of the transition because it's such a detailed game per se, because there's so many creators, there's so many creations. We don't know who and when and how will transition to the sixth matrix, right? So that's why the next period will be exceptionally choppy. And the way I would describe it, think of COVID and multiply that by 1,000, 10,000. So during COVID, all types of infrastructure came under all types of pressure. Supply chain, travel, economy, everything was like just in chaotic state. So multiply that by 1,000 plus. That's where we're heading. And so it will become choppy, and people will be starting, a lot of people already sensing, there is enough people already talking about this, enough of people trying to figure out what are the steps. It's just not as many figured out what they need to do to create smooth transition. And the smoothest transition, and it's interesting, through many episodes earlier, we talked about sovereignty. To have the smoothest individual transition, not only develop your inner harmony and your inner sovereignty, create sovereignty in your physical world, which is buy a piece of land, have a small, big, whatever house you want that you can maintain yourself, where you don't need the staff of 10. Learn how to grow food, and you're fine. It doesn't matter what happens. So whoever is aligned can have a spectacular experience through this transition. Whoever is not aligned with themselves, and with these vectors, they're in for a big surprise, and many are in for a big surprise. And once again, if I bring the analogy back to COVID, I had the most spectacular time of my life during COVID, because I didn't subscribe to any of this bullshit. And I was like, I realized all the travel industry is hurting. So I was flying all over the world, renting chalets at 60, 70% discount. I clearly remember when I was in Portugal, I rented this massive chalet that's like a mini castle. And it was like, I was almost a little bit afraid being alone there. So I called my friends in Barcelona. I was like, guys, come on in. I have so many rooms here. Let's hang out together. So my friend came with his wife, and we were cycling and having fun, right? Like, I was flying from Portugal then to Bali, and I was like one of 5 people on Boeing 787 Dreamliner. Like, there was nobody on the flight. It's like basically flying private.
Yeah.
It was a spectacular time, but did I understand any of that back then? No. But around a year before, due to my panic attacks, I started being forced, not even a year ago, less like 9 months ago, I started being forced to start trusting my intuition. And I was like, I don't know where this is leading me. I'm just going to trust this intuition. And I kept going. And then I happened to be in a spectacular place. I transitioned to a chairman in my job. And by the way, that company, right after I transitioned, like a few weeks later, COVID starts. And we were in dentistry, and the company goes from 30 million a year to $0 a year in revenue.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, if I was there, holy fuck, the experience I would have.
Yeah.
So I left like on the peak.
Yeah, right at the right time.
Right on the peak. And then I was like, oh, the world is my oyster. Nobody's traveling, but I don't have to be anywhere. And I have a bunch of cash. Okay. And the funny thing is, I went to places where there was no COVID or where the government didn't care about COVID. And I literally would just go around the world, one place start locking down because the woke virus got to them or whatever they call it, you know? And I was like, oh, time to get out of this country. It's like where they don't care about COVID. Oh, I fly there. I show up. Everything is open. Nobody cares about it. Everybody's like, okay, the life goes on. So same with this transition. Listen to your intuition. If it's going to be irrational or counterintuitive, follow it. As a basic, just place to live, access to food. As the supply chain might have hiccups, you'll be fine. Work on yourself. Focus on finding your happiness. So, and that's the smooth transition.
Yeah, you mentioned something a couple times, and I wanted to tie it into this idea. Well, it's not an idea. This new transition that is the sixth matrix. What is, if any, the benefit of the ego? Because we've talked about the ego and how it can be a poor instrument, and how it can keep us stuck, and how it can keep us fighting against either leaning into happiness or fight against us aligning with our true purpose. So is there a value to ego in the sixth matrix, or is one of the things that we need to do is dissolve the ego completely to be able to enter the sixth matrix?
So that would be what you're sharing is a little bit oversimplification of dissolving the ego. We gotta heal the ego. Ego is not going anywhere because it's part of our construct, and it's an important part of our construct. If you remove ego, then you become empty space. You become passive. You become irrelevant, and the self-destruction will start. And by the way, there's like quite a few among my friends who went into spirituality either through psychedelics or some strange teachings, ended up in the state where it's like, oh, nothing matters, like this nihilistic or whatever they call it state, where it's like there's no purpose to anything. I'm just emptiness. That's distorted bullshit. That's basically when you say I'm nothing, I'm emptiness, you're starting to become that, which means your body starts self-destroying. That's the message you're giving to yourself. So there are three types of egos: ego of the mind, ego of the soul, ego of the spirit. What we need to do is harmonize them. And ego of the mind has the most bolted on programs or subpersonalities, or I gotta be overachiever, I gotta be worthy, like I'm not good enough, I'm afraid of this, blah, blah, blah. The list goes on, right? So that's why most of the focus on harmonizing our personality, which is ego of the mind. And then soul has ego as well. People think, oh, souls are all these like white and fluffy bunnies. Oh no, they'll take you for a ride. Trust me. And soul wants to have as many evolutionary experiences as possible because it wants to grow, expand, and be advanced soul. If you just purely listen to your soul, your body might die because you can run out of energy, because it will sign you up for every little fucking thing that's possible, and it will build connection with some of the hardcore, because the harder their experience, the more the faster evolutionary lesson is. So it can get you in front of some really fucking sketchy people that will accelerate your discernment learning. That's soul, you know. We don't need to go that way fully. And then the third, the spirit. The spirit is basically absolute, or the closest to the absolute and God. And really the only thing the spirit cares about is being very efficient and pragmatic at using the energy to structure universe according to universal laws. So if something is not according to universal laws, let's just fucking destroy it, burn it, and etc. As a result, we had crusades, when when the Christian religion was emerging. Then we have jihad when that religion, the Muslim religion, blah blah blah. Every has a shape and form of overexpression of spirits. So spirit, when spirit expresses, you want to go and hardcore teach everyone to align with universal laws, and whoever does not or whatever does not, just fucking kill them and burn. So that's ego expression as well. So when we understand this triad structure of the ego, and we understand what each ego desires, and how those desires can be inharmonious, and harmonize them and balance them. First of all, balance each of them within themselves, and then balance the three. We develop what we call discerning mind, and that ties all the pieces together of the fifth matrix. For a person to develop a discerning mind, where they sense what their body and mind needs, their mind and body is comfortable, it's fed, and it's safe, and blah blah blah. They hear the soul, which has a specific evolutionary program for this incarnation, and they're playing the game, or they're enjoying life, and the spirit provides the energy, and you're aligned with universal laws, and etc. So all three of them are happy. Then everything is amazing. Then the maximum amount of energy is flowing through this body. And matrix fifth matrix is all about synchronizing this triad. And that's why in religion we have a metaphorical concept of Trinity. What is it? Son, Spirit, Father. Like, I'm not.
The Son, the Father, the Holy Spirit.
Yeah,
Holy
exactly.
Ghost.
Similar thing, metaphorical. Not everyone understands what it actually means. This is what it actually means. So fifth matrix is all about synchronizing this triad and developing, as a result, discerning mind. So and this ties back together to where we started. Fifth matrix is developing discernment. So once we harmonize, we have discerning mind. We're in harmony within. We're transitioned to the sixth matrix. Now we use all these same structures to create. The question becomes, what do I feel like creating out of the state of happiness, and to remain in the state of happiness? Because whatever is aligned for me to create, right? Because every soul has different experience. Some soul brought experience of building advanced spaceships. That's what they should be doing. Some souls brought the experience of advanced healing capabilities. And you asked about the infrastructure. We will use existing infrastructure. I don't know how smooth, not smooth this transition will be, but it will be intense, but it could have been even more intense. And based on my metric of intensity, let's call it 3 to 5 out of 10, but it could have been 7 to 10 with a lot of destruction in the world. There will be destruction, but it will not be as insane. Let's put it that way. So hence, we will use whatever we can until people who transition to the state of creation will start replacing some of the infrastructure with much more advanced infrastructure. Like when it comes to healing, it's going to be more like that Star Trek device, whatever it's called. That's where we're going to be, bioenergetically heal anything and everything in the body. And now we're also learning that most of the healing technologies were invented were not actually healing, like chemotherapy. All that's coming to the surface. It's all money-making technologies. That's why what energy was created from? Probably greed, competition, whatever else, that will disappear.
Yeah, it's not coming from the energy of actually helping others.
Yeah. It's like, how do you create a machine? And I have so many examples, even like I've spent time in healthcare quite a few years, how most of technologies were created to create, not to heal patients, but to create lifelong customers. Meaning patients with problems where symptoms constantly being managed. So the patient doesn't die, but spends all possible money and energy to mitigate the symptoms.
Yeah, well, it also seems like they're always coming up with a new symptom, that maybe there's a new drug that we can now market.
No.
I often think about the first time I heard it, I said, "What the fuck is restless leg syndrome?" I mean, that's just an example, right? Like, so someone's leg is twitching, and this is now suddenly like, oh my god, we've got a drug for that. Take that. Take
But
two in
even
the
take
morning.
psychology, right? Like I read somewhere that the way the practice of psychology or the industry was built, when they were building the book of all the diagnosis, everybody just contributed whatever weird behaviors they observed to get their name in the book. As a result, we have so many mental problems, apparently, which we really don't have, which is mostly just unbalanced energy. But now everybody has fucking 15 mental issues that are being treated with what? Rather than change of behavior, with pills.
Yeah.
And or if it's treated with change of behavior, the modalities that are given to them are so hard to implement that sooner or later the person gives up and says, like, fuck it, just give me pills. And where I want to bring this, what I have observed, spirituality became same as Western healthcare. Too many people in spirituality are selling pills now, because very few people, because the mindset right now of a consumer is, give me something where I don't have to do the work myself. This is deeply ingrained, and this does not work in this transition. You cannot, if somebody is offering you to do whatever magic ritual or magic practice that will save you from anything, this is not going to save you from anything, and high chance they're going to be stealing your energy, and that's going to aggravate and make things worse. In the moment, for a period of time, it may make sense better to create a perception, same as parallel Western medicine. Oh, we manage your symptoms, but then the core problem never goes away. So a lot of spirituality became that. But what's also exciting, more and more experts and professionals emerging who are actually dealing with the root causes. So if somebody is offering you easy, like, oh, I'll do everything for you, I'll heal you, blah, 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 and if they're not sharing knowledge with you, how things work here, what is actually happening in you, and how you should change your worldview and how you should harmonize your behavior, you should probably choose a different specialist. And if you do choose the specialist that tries to sell you magic pill, magic retreat, and etc., that's also part of the experience of discernment. So don't judge yourself. If you heard this video after you've already bought a bunch of spiritual pills, that's perfectly fine. That's part of the journey. And the key in this universe is knowledge. When we start understanding what is unfolding, how it's unfolding, then we can actually figure out a lot of things ourselves. And what knowledge does, it harmonizes. What knowledge or information, what pure information is high vibration energy. So, for example, I see you yawning. The reason you're yawning, a lot of energy right now is traveling through you. And this is the result of this energy. This energy is structuring you. It's structuring your energetic field. So for people who are watching these podcasts, sometimes you'll feel like, fuck, I can't sit through an hour and a half or hour. A lot of this information is highly structured energy. And watch 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes at a time. Nap if you need to, and this is normal. Like if, for example, you buy some of our books, we've only published the first one. It's only 30 pages. Very few people can read 30 pages right away. Most people can get through 5, 10, and after that, they feel like they'll need to stop. They might get headache. They might just fall asleep. And all these are indications that this information is doing the work of structuring you. It's realigning, cleansing, and realigning all your energy. And that's why when you're looking for modalities in spirituality, look for things that will give you explanation of what's happening and where they teach you and where they make you sovereign, where they basically give you the right instruments for you to be sovereign, not to keep coming back. If you keep coming back, you're just you're just in American or Canadian or whatever version of Western healthcare you want to pick. It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember, I think it was when we did the very first podcast. It was one or two of them where it's like afterwards I had like this crazy headache.
Yeah.
Like I almost had like a migraine in the evening. I'm like, and what the fuck? And actually, it's funny because I was talking to my girlfriend about it, just noticing even in the last, I'd say month, 2 months, how often I've had a headache out of nowhere, which I would never have. It's just interesting to notice, like, where
I
do
am
these
happy
symptoms
that
come
you
from?
mentioned this because this is something I wanted to share, and this has actually reminded me. Many people will start having these experiences, either headaches. Headaches is a light side effect, because with headaches, basically, what's happening, uh, six matrices install, the souls were waiting for the six matrix to be fully installed. The process has been going for some time. It has been a lengthy process. There are a lot of souls, people, avatars involved in the process. It's finally installed. So
Mhm.
what they're doing now, they're literally increasing the amount of energy that is being sent to avatar. So those avatars actually start properly awakening. And by awakening, mean aligning with who they are and why they're here with their incarnation program. Just an example from today, real life example, and she'll probably be watching this episode. A friend messages me. I don't know where she's in the world right now. She was in Vienna before that. The past 2 nights, she was having crazy experiences at night where she couldn't sleep, be shaking, and etc. And that's another example of that, because her soul is really powerful. That the soul started sending energy, and it's that energy starting to burn things that are not harmonious, and the side effects, which are not side effects, are
Mm.
intense. But the most important thing that I want to share with everyone is the emotional instability that a lot of people will be overwhelmed by. So whatever you have not harmonized, this increased energy that's being sent from your soul, and that's related to a subset of souls on this planet. Some souls just incarnated for this experience and they're going to be on the way out. But the souls that are transitioning, I'm speaking to those here now. You're one of them. My soul is one of them. And whoever are going to end up listening to this, intuitively drawn to this, will be, high chance will be that soul. As they'll be sending increased amount of energy to the avatar, all the stuff that has been suppressed, not addressed, will start coming to the surface, to a point where a lot of people will feel suicidal because they wouldn't know what to do with that energy. Real life example, a friend of mine is going through that experience right now. So many more of the of avatars or people will be experiencing all types of weird side effects. I've experienced this earlier because I guess it was a part of a grander plan of the universe, of God, of Absolute. And I experienced it in 2016, 3 months of insomnia, then panic attacks in 2019, and all types of weird things. Don't be afraid. It's part of the process. Seek help and seek somebody who can explain to you what's happening. And we're going to be recording more and more podcasts, which are freely available. And start aligning with what's unfolding, and just hang on there. It's going to be a rough patch.
Okay, so hang on for dear life.
Yeah.
Well, so we have now officially entered the sixth matrix. I
Yes.
think as we go forward now in these, I don't know if we call them lessons of wisdom. It feels like
Just
what you're
share
doing
knowledge
is,
and experiences.
yeah, it's a lot more than just a podcast, that's for sure. Yeah, I'm curious to see how things are going to keep unfolding, just in terms of the actual life events,
Yeah.
as we get to see that deconstruct itself in real time, and then also what starts to show up in our lives, and in, like you said, like even with symptoms, whether it's headache, whether it's, broken arms, whether it's like new ideas, new ways of structuring things going forward. And so I'm excited to see just where this path goes, and what needs to happen to get my ego out of the way.
Or harmonize the ego. Ego will stay there and just be in harmony, understand its place. Your ego of the mind, ego of the soul, and ego of the spirit. And by the way, there are a lot of processes unfolding to make this transition as smooth as possible. There's no goal to make it as punishing or as more suffering as possible. But there will be the events that will unfold will be perceived as suffering and punishment, because people are so stuck up on some of the values or beliefs or mental constructs or whatever it is that have not been serving them for a while already, but they're so like trying to hold on, and the more you hold on, the more suffering you'll experience. And based on what this transition should have been originally, it got substantially softer. The planet should have been going through like complete nightmare of major wars, climatic cataclysms, and etc. All of that has softened. Regional conflicts, crazy weather discrepancies, but not to a point where everything goes to shit. Like even the economic stuff we're experiencing could have been substantially worse. It will get worse because that brings me to one more point that I had to share, because it brings us, the reason I touched on economy, it brings us to another universal law rolling out on this planet, and it's the law of proportionality. So the wealth, per se, what we define as wealth, the access to material will be directly proportional to the amount of energy that you're bringing, that is flowing through your body, which is basically directly proportional to how happy you are. But genuine happy, not fake happy. There's a bunch of people sitting in Bali right now, catching their transcendental state from meditations or taking all types of pills, right? That creates happiness. That is not happiness. So true, genuine happiness, so basically the resources will be directly correlated to that. As a result, we'll see economic structures collapsing. That's the word I'll use. It's gonna go through major restructuring, because all that will be redistributed, and it will express itself in all types of forms. It's very hard to predict what it's gonna be, how it's gonna play out, but like I sense major fiat currencies losing a lot of value as an example. Maybe it's gonna play out differently, but that's one of the ways to play it out. So that's another important reason to realign with who you are, because the more you realign with who you are, the more energy is traveling through you, the more happy you are, and then the matrix will give you what you're supposed to have. There's through different events. It's not like in some scenarios it will be winning lottery. In other scenarios, you'll sign a big contract, or a bunch of like your YouTube channel out of nowhere gains million views, and there's just like all types of possibilities. So as long as you're aligning on working on yourself, you'll be in a great spot going through this transition.
All right. Well, to working on ourselves.
Indeed.
All right. Well, we'll be back next week, same time, same channel. Well, I'm not even going to plan what next week
You're
will
connecting with your dominating energy of wisdom.
I'm just going to feel into what it's going to be.
Who knows what the world looks like next week, right?
Oh,
and what experiences you had in the next week.
Like it could go upside down by next week, and then we're going in a whole different direction.
Exactly. So step at a time here, focus on yourself, and everything will be great.
All right.
Thanks, Mitch. And
all right. I will see you then.
See you soon. Bye now.